said your PVC or your gun. And then I went right ahead and said, talking to the Nigerian diaspora, how did they share the dog that they are now sending a whole lap to the Imam of the mosque? What's the business of the diaspora with the PVC? You guys, they don't give you a vote. Even if you are going to vote, you're going to have to travel down to Nigeria to cast a ballot. Most of you have already considered worthless. So what is your business with the PVC? I'll tell you. But you know me and my definitions. Definitions are critical to an understanding of any subject. Definitions might be likened to the doctor's diagnostics. The doctor, before treating your ailment, even after listening to your symptoms, would most times ask for diagnostic tests to be carried out on you. And that would then determine the course of treatment that it would prescribe for the identified ailment. I prefer to view definitions in much the same way, because I already live in a country where words take on new meanings simply because those who have ruined the country elect to give it meanings that is consistent with the narrative that they would prefer to have. So what is the Nigerian diaspora? It's not just, when you say, oh, it's the Nigerians who live abroad, that is a misunderstanding of terms. Because it is not one amorphous whole. It's actually a collection of a motley crew. First, there is what I call the Golden Fleece generation. This was the generation that headed into the UK particularly, and then later on America in the 50s, the 60s, and in the 70s. These were the golden age of Nigeria as an idea. And there were degrees of national planning, and the seed of the original premiers or the government, the first government that followed after the colonists. They had plans, so they trained manpower, they sent people abroad, scholarships of all sorts, and there were also all sorts of scholarships, and the Naira wasn't as useless, it was even pounds in those days. So this generation was sent abroad, sometime at the cost of their town union, sometime at government cost. They were sponsored abroad most of the time, and they went to acquire skills, mostly as teachers. The first generation of school principals, especially in the western part of Nigeria, were largely sponsored abroad to even pick up masters. So you had school principals who were master's degree older, but mostly sponsored abroad. Some of them in Cambridge, some of them in Oxford. They went to some of the best universities abroad. They were sent as a generation that went in pursuit of the Golden Fleece. This generation largely returned back to Nigeria, and they're not dying off, or they're largely dead now. I'm talking about the first set, the 50s and the 60s. Now, they begat what I would call the privileged refugees. I use the word advisedly because these are their children, mostly people in my own generation. They were born abroad, they were the Tokumbos. And then as Buhari crashed, first Shagari, and then Buhari, as they crashed the economy in quick succession, and then Babangida came and destroyed it completely and set up the prebenda rental economy system. What happened was that the middle class was decimated, and the people who went in the golden generation were mostly people who peopled the middle class, the professors, the professional class, doctors. They fled to Saudi Arabia where they were viable. Most of them left for universities abroad. Most of them simply just left. And then their children followed as Nigeria crashed in the 90s and in the 2000s. They left. And then you've got another generation, those who have moved out of Nigeria in the last 5 to 10 years. this generation beheld the ruin of Nigeria and they began to leave. They sold their substances. You left. So you are all abroad. And then we started the age of the stowaways. Those who just found their way. It's not like they never existed, but it became increasingly common as we entered the 2000s. And then today, we're in a situation where Nigerians have become members of the diaspora, haven't traveled through the Sahara, haven't traveled through the Mediterranean, enduring the pains of perhaps what might be called slavery because they become victims and they've been trafficked. This is the Nigerian diaspora, a motley crew who have largely fled a country that has refused to give them hope, succor. You fled in different ways. Some fled privileged, advantaged. You have legal status. Several have fled and died fleeing. So let's be clear when I talk about the diaspora. I'm not talking about you in your nice job. I'm talking about those who might not even have jobs and who are just subsistence. Those who are making white men and any man for that matter happy in the Parisian park. That is the Nigerian diaspora. I'm talking to everyone. So why am I talking to those who do not possess votes? I'm talking to you because I believe that you are the most rational Nigerians. You are the ones who realize the danger. You are the ones who are still sane. Because those of us who have remained behind in Nigeria to varying degrees are largely insane. It is the only way we can cope with the insanity with which we have to live. Insanity is a way of life in Nigeria today. So that you recognize the fact of that insanity and then took off the way you have is suggestive of the fact that you have retained your capacity for reasoning in a way the rest of us have failed. But you need to go beyond that. You need to go beyond that. How? I've found it almost impossible to come across a single Nigerian who is in Europe or America, where I largely travel when I do, or in other parts of Africa. I've yet to come across a single one who wouldn't come back to Nigeria if this country were to find its feet and ever get its act together. So those of you who are abroad are more in pain about Nigeria than those of us who are here in Nigeria, because we have our insanity to help us to cope with the sickening reality of our existence. I dare say that it is actually possible for a Nigerian abroad to sustain a defense in insanity by reason of his citizenship or Nigerian nationality, I should say, not citizenship. It's a trauma to have to live the way we live. So you are outliers. You live outside of this madness, and you should see better than those of us who are admittedly crazy because we have remained here and we have not affected the society in which we have elected to remain. So it becomes difficult to plead that we are safe in a situation where we have not displayed sanity. But you have. You fled. You left us behind. So in fact, the craziest of us are those of us who have the capacity to live, who are not beneficiaries of the madness, but have elected to stay. If you now want to know the craziest of us, is that boy they call Dele. That one is mad. I can tell you straight up, he's an insane man. Because if he wasn't insane, think about it. Cushy job, he could sit in America and be throwing spades from that place. Who's going to be able to touch it? He could have picked up American citizenship. That boy refused. Coconut head. He then came to Nigeria. So listen, you get the general drift. Point is this: you need to be crazy to live in Nigeria. We admit our own madness. But you have escaped. So tell me, exactly what have you done to affect those of us who have remained behind? Yeah, we are insane, we agree. Because each and every one of you want to come back if we make this place work. But we are obviously failing to make it work. But you are also failing with us as well, because you've not exactly been the kind of positive influence that you could be. In your nostalgia, you have played roles that have not been quite helpful in resolving the Nigerian conundrum, because you have ignored that when it comes to subjects like democracy, when it comes to the subject of war, when it comes to the subject of citizenship, the standard cannot shift simply because it is Nigeria. You live in sane societies, but you want insane interpretations that apply to the insanity of us in Nigeria to govern the resolution of our problems. What do I mean? All right. So what role do the Nigerian diaspora typically play in the affairs of Nigeria? You don't have a vote. We've agreed on that. So what do you generally do? You sit down, and then in your homesickness, you begin to romanticize ideas that your admitted sanity and obvious intelligence should tell you will not work. Let me break it down. The will of the Nigerian people have never governed the Nigerian space, not since 1966. We can agree on that. Okay. You saw that, you saw the constraints, you felt the constraints, you took off. We stayed back because we're mad. But some of us, in our insanities, are able to see what the issues are, and the issues are simple. Nigerians need to be reconnected with their citizenship. This will not happen until Nigeria is restructured. I have heard a lot of you vociferous and supportive of the referendum. Yeah. Referendums are good. But the Caliphate Decree 24 of 1999, otherwise known as the 1999 Constitution, does not have a provision for a referendum. If we're ever going to get a referendum, it is going to be because we fought and won the right to a restructuring of Nigeria. When I said fight and win, I'm not suggesting armed struggle. Because in the absence of a constitutional provision for a referendum, the only event in which you may force that is by insisting on the restructuring of Nigeria. Let me explain myself. If you, who are abroad, take the time to explain, because you are more connected to Nigerian issues, but in your romanticization of Nigeria and the pains you feel in your own sickness, there is largely, and I'm not saying everybody is guilty of this, but I'm speaking to those who have more or less sat abroad and imagined that we could have a clean-cut division of Nigeria that is devoid of bloodshed if we do not get restructuring first. I desire a restructure of Nigeria. That restructure might very well lead to its division. I'm not against whatever the people want. But to find expression for that, You have to educate the people to understand that there is no provision for referendum in our fraudulent constitution. And if you want to have this, you have to elect people who are offering you the opportunity to have restructuring as the government agenda upon election. See, when I'm speaking to those of us who live in Nigeria, I'm telling them, get your PVC and then vote for issues and ideas. Central to these issues and ideas should be restructuring of the Nigerian state. That any candidate, whatever the office, who is not aligned with a restructuring plan, not just the presidency, if we merely voted the president talking restructuring, not minding those who definitely do not want any restructuring, and that is not just a part of the country, it's a political class. If we merely focused on the person of the president and we do not look to the party platform, which is unambiguous. Now, I am not silly enough to imagine that such a person will win a landslide victory all over Nigeria. But I know that there is a conscious majority of Nigerians who, if mobilized behind such a plan, would stand behind it. In at least 4 out of the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria, there is a thirst, a yearning, and a general demand for the restructure of Nigeria. What happened in Kaduna recently should be a pointer to the urgency of the need to restructure Nigeria. What is the alternative to what I'm saying? We sleepwalk into the war that is already raging, but that is poised to go all around the country because we will not be united behind a clear plan. There is a clear agenda because there is a question that Mr. President, General Buhari, has not answered. What do the terrorists want? You and I can hazard a guess as to exactly what the terrorists want. But the only time you have anarchy in a space is when people cannot unite behind ideas. The idea is to awaken ourselves to the need. Pick up your PVC as a reconnection to your citizenship. It's you. They've said that we're in a democracy. At least they're still pretending we are. They're talking about an election in 2023, which may or may not hold. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But there is a bridge to cross now. And that bridge cannot be crossed without your PVC, which enables you to cross to the other side. And that is the point where, if there comes a point where you can vote, you then use what you have, your PVC. Without it, you can't do anything. So those of you abroad who are busy talking about break it up, when Nigeria is mewa, let's focus first at this point, because that's the only game in town right now. That game might not be available tomorrow. We move. But as of today, as bleak as the situation might seem, and it is bleak, without us having a fallback position, we walk into anarchy. The subject today, I was clear, your PVC or your gun, talking to the Nigerian diaspora. You don't have votes, but you are a potent force when it comes to educating those of us who are in Nigeria. You pay a lot of people's school fees in Nigeria. You're paying house rent. Some people you send what amounts to salaries. Several of you are running charitable businesses, laboring abroad, sending money to Nigeria just to make sure that the people you need to feed have something or the other that they are doing to create value, so that the whole load will not be on your head. You still bring it, they will steal it, because stealing is a culture back here. It's part of our insanity. I'm a business owner and I employ, and I see things going on, and I live with that madness. So you don't need to preach it to me, but you are still a critical force. Use your capacities. Educate the people. Look, whether you like it or not, You guys have critical numbers. In the countries in which you live, if you would organize yourselves, you have critical mass. You can affect policies. What happened after the NSAS protest and the murder and massacre that followed, especially in Britain, and the pressure the Nigerian diaspora in Britain placed on the conservative government of Boris Johnson, in spite of his edging, hemming and hawing and time-wasting devices to make things pass away and be forgotten, your efforts forced the Commons to debate NSAS. That is because you're there and you organized and you did something about it. Do something about our situations. Draw attention to the madness that exists in Nigeria. Help us to hold them accountable. Help us. When they throw all these lies around, help us. Counter those lies when you know the truth. You live in a place where people still use their intellect and is of value. Use that. Help us highlight these issues. Join protests. Don't let those who are protesting appear to be the fringe, because your protests draw attention to the insanity. It's not like the British or the American are unaware of the madness that goes on in our space. They have details of everything that happened at NSAS. They don't need us to have any inquiry if they were interested in the truth in Nigeria. But it's not in their own strategic interest. It's better Nigeria is the way it is for them. But even though you live there, it's not in your interest and it does not serve your purpose for this insanity to persist. You could draw attention to that. By all means, draw attention to it. The length of time it takes them to try genuine activists that they would clamp. Look at Yele's case, look at Igboho's case, look at Mazen Nnamdi Kanu's case. Draw attention to those. You don't have to be a member of the Igbo clan, or rather the Igbo ethnic group, to join protests when it comes to, and those of you organizing these protests, make them inclusive. We are all in this boat together. You don't need to agree with me. Take the ones you agree with, work with it. The ones you don't like, don't worry, I'm a madman. You are the same ones. You are abroad, I'm right here. If I wasn't insane, why am I here?